You ever meet someone who looks like they've got it all together? Money, power, the kind of life people dream about. But if you look close enough, you see the cracks. That was Jonathan Cross. By 38, he had the kind of fortune most folks wouldn't even dare to imagine. His name made markets jump. His phone calls made senators stand up straighter. People called him ruthless, brilliant, untouchable. And maybe on the outside, he was all of that. But behind closed doors, standing alone in a glass tower 80 floors above the city, Jonathan carried a hollowness so heavy it almost choked him. Every night when the noise of Wall Street died down, he'd find himself haunted by one fragile thing, a half-remembered lullaby, a melody without words, the only inheritance left by a mother he never knew. He wore the proof of her once around his neck, a small tarnished silver locket with a willow tree bent toward a crescent moon. That little piece of metal, worthless to anyone else, was the only clue that once upon a time somebody loved him. One stormy night after winning yet another brutal corporate takeover that left him emptier than before, Jonathan ditched his driver and drove aimlessly through the city. Rain pounded on the windshield wipers, swiping in a rhythm that felt almost like that same ghost of a lullaby. And then his car coughed, sputtered, and died in the middle of some forgotten Brooklyn block. A billionaire stranded like a kid left behind. He cursed under his breath and was about to call his team when he noticed a warm flicker of neon across the street, an old diner with a sign that read, Eddie's Spoon. It was the kind of place Jonathan never stepped into: grease-stained counters, cracked red vinyl booths, the smell of bacon and burnt coffee hanging thick in the air. But it was either that or sit in his dead Aston Martin while the rain beat him senseless. So he ducked inside, shaking off his coat, trying not to draw too much attention in his $1,000 suit. He slid into a booth at the back, ordered a coffee and a clipped voice, and was ready to just zone out when he heard it. A woman sitting in the corner rocking a little boy, who couldn't have been older than 4, began to hum. At first, it was faint, just a soft sound meant to calm her child. But then she began to sing. Jonathan froze mid-sip, the heavy ceramic mug rattling against the saucer. The tune. It wasn't just familiar, it was the tune. The very lullaby that had haunted him for decades, complete with words he'd never heard before. The willow weeps, but not in sorrow. He sheds his leaves for a new tomorrow. The room around him faded. The clatter of dishes, the hiss of the coffee pot, even the storm outside, all gone. All he could hear was that song, those words that unlocked something deep inside of him. His chest tightened, his hand shook, and for the first time in 38 years, he felt like he was hearing his mother's voice. When the boy finally settled and drifted back to sleep, the young woman, dark circles under her eyes, but a kind of quiet strength in her face, looked up and caught Jonathan staring. Her name was Anna May. She was just a waitress, a single mom scraping by with double shifts, and in her eyes, he was just another strange man in an expensive suit staring too hard. But Jonathan couldn't hold back. He crossed the room, towering over her booth, his voice low and sharp. "Where did you learn that song?" Anna frowned, protective of her boy. "It's just a lullaby. My grandmother sang it to my mom sang it to me, and now I sing it to him." "Why, it's not just a lullaby." Jonathan shot back, his jaw tight. "That song, it's my family song." Her eyes flashed, not with fear but offense. "With all due respect, sir, you're mistaken. That song belongs to my family. My grandmother Rose wrote it down in her journals. She drew that willow tree and the moon on every scrap of paper she touched." Jonathan felt his entire world tilt. He pulled the locket from under his shirt, set it on the table, and flipped it open to reveal the engraving. Anna's breath caught. Her eyes darted between the silver in his palm and the face of the man standing over her. My grandmother used to sketch that exact symbol, she whispered almost to herself. The willow and the moon. In that instant, the anger in Jonathan's voice melted into something else, desperation. He sat down across from her shoulders, slumping under the weight of his own emptiness. I never knew my parents, he admitted. I was left at a home as an infant. This locket and a fragment of that song, that's all I had. Until tonight, I thought I was the only person alive who knew it. Anna studied him, torn between suspicion and an aching familiarity she couldn't explain. He leaned closer, his voice breaking. Please, tell me everything your grandmother told you, about that song, about that symbol. And that's where their unlikely partnership began. Jonathan offered her more than she'd ever dreamed of: quit the diner, come work. For him, help him unravel this mystery. He'd pay her 5 times what she made, cover her rent, her bills, even a proper car seat for her boy. Anna hesitated. It sounded insane, maybe even dangerous. But when she looked at her son's worn-out sneakers and thought of the overdue bills waiting at home, she said yes. The very next morning, they stood together in her late grandmother's dusty old bungalow. The air smelled of lavender and time gone by. Up in the attic, they discovered a chest filled with photographs, letters, and at the very bottom, Rose's diary. The diary told a story that shattered Jonathan's entire existence. His mother, Catherine Ashworth, wasn't some faceless ghost. She'd been a young heiress trapped in a gilded cage by a father obsessed with power. She fell in love with a poor painter named Robert, a man who wrote songs and sketched willows under the moon. Together, they created the lullaby, a promise to their unborn child. But when her father, Harrison Ashworth, found out she was pregnant, he tore her life apart, stole her baby, sent him to a foundling home, and locked Catherine away. Jonathan's hands trembled as he read the pages. The woman he'd mourned his whole life wasn't dead. She was alive, hidden away in a sanitarium upstate, branded hysterical, and silenced for nearly 50 years. Fueled by rage and hope, Jonathan stormed into the Ashworth estate days later. Picture it, a vast library, shelves towering like walls of judgment. And behind a desk sat Harrison Ashworth, 91 years old, but still sharp as a hawk. Jonathan laid the locket on the desk like evidence. "It belonged to your daughter," he said coldly. "My mother." The old man's eyes narrowed, his voice dry as paper. "You're mistaken. My daughter has been unwell for a very long time." Jonathan leaned forward, his voice like steel. Was Robert a fantasy? Was the child she carried a fantasy? Was I a fantasy? A flicker crossed Harrison's face then, that cruel smirk. "You have his intensity," he sneered. "The painter. A penniless dreamer who polluted her bloodline. I did what I had to do, preserve the Ashworth name. Look at you, boy. You've done well. You should be thanking me." Jonathan's fists clenched at his sides. "You destroyed her life. You threw away her son. That isn't protection, that's monstrous." But Harrison only leaned back smug. "And yet here you are, wealthy, powerful. I gave you the grit you never would have found otherwise. Catherine is safe, cared for. That is the end of it." "No!" Jonathan said, his voice rising like a storm. "That's the beginning. I will see her, and I will free her." And so began the war, Harrison wielding his wealth, unleashing lawyers, regulators, and smear campaigns against Jonathan's empire. But Jonathan had something the old man never counted on: proof. DNA tests, Rose's diary, Anna's sworn testimony. A judge finally sided with him, granting him the right to see his mother. When Jonathan stepped into her room at Briarwood Grove, he nearly crumbled. Catherine sat by the window, frail, her hair white, her eyes vacant from decades of medication. He knelt in front of her, whispered, "Mother, it's me, Jonathan, your son." But she didn't recognize him. She just stared through him, empty. Jonathan's heart shattered. All those years of searching, all the rage, the hope, only to find her lost behind a wall he couldn't tear down. He broke then, a billionaire brought to his knees. That's when Anna stepped forward. She placed a hand on his shoulder and softly, she began to sing. The willow weeps, but not in sorrow. At first, nothing. But then Catherine's fingers twitched, her lips parted, and slowly, weakly, she sang too. "My dearest love, come back to me." Jonathan's tears spilled as his mother's eyes cleared, focusing on him for the first time. "Robert," she whispered. "No." Jonathan choked out, gripping her fragile hands. "It's Jonathan, your son." And then the dam broke. Recognition, memory, love long buried, flooding back. Catherine wept, clutching him as best she could. "My baby. My beautiful baby boy." That night the song did what lawyers and court orders never could. It resurrected a mother's love, bridged 50 years of silence, and brought Jonathan home. 6 months later, his penthouse was unrecognizable, no longer cold marble and empty space, but filled with the warmth of family. Catherine's laughter drifted through the halls, Anna baked in the kitchen. Cody's drawings covered the fridge. Jonathan wasn't just a millionaire anymore. He was a son, a partner, a father figure. And when word came that Harrison Ashworth had died alone in his estate, no one shed a tear. His legacy of cruelty ended with him. Jonathan's legacy, love music family, was just beginning. But here's the part that sticks with me, and maybe it will with you too. Harrison thought he'd erase them, thought he could bury love under wealth and power. But in the end, it was a simple lullaby that tore his empire down. So let me ask you, what do you think? Was Jonathan right not to seek revenge, to let the old man die in silence? Or should people like Harrison face the world's judgment, not just their own lonely guilt? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your take. Because stories like this, they're not just about the past. They're about us, about the kind of future we want to fight for.